Hi, everybody. Appreciate everybody making the time to come join us for our talk today. Just curious, because I'm not sure of the audience, like, well, what are the majors that I'm talking to? What are your majors? Computer science? Market? Okay. CIS? Okay. Yeah. CIS? Okay. Cyber? Okay, perfect. Very good. Okay. So it's the right audience, making sure. Just want to thank Mahadi for setting this up, and also Professor Adele and Professor Baruch for putting this all together. Just a brief introduction about myself. My name is Sukir Damlat. I'm a lifelong CUNY member. I did my undergrad at Hunter, and I wound up starting and finishing my MBA here at Baruch in 2014. I'm a proud CUNY member, right? And I just want to say you are the best school, because I know we were recently voted for upward mobility, right? Like Baruch every year wins awards, and so it was really great to see that on the news recently. As for my career, it goes back quite a while. From when I was in high school, from the 90s, I was actually a hacker for hire, and I worked for a lot of companies on Wall Street. Again, a lot of it started off with a lot of hardware related, and then eventually moved up to software and information security. So that was the late 90s. In '99, also the United Nations was actually hacked. This goes back again a couple decades. And specifically, it was the United Nations Children's Fund, or UNICEF, everybody knows it as. So they were breached, and I was actually hired by the chief security officer at the time to figure out how did we get hacked, how do we fix the problem, and how do we prevent it from happening. And as you can see, I spent the next 20 years of my career at the United Nations. And when I started there, the UN, for folks that don't know, we're across a couple hundred countries. We had something close to like 500 different offices. And when you went office to office, there was no standards. So, today we're using Windows here. You go to the next office and they're using something completely different, and so on and so forth. And so that was problem number one that we tried to solve at the UN. I call it was the Wild West of software. In 2020, at the end of my tenure there, I was actually leading the GRC. And after that, that's when I made the jump to Citi. Surprisingly, Citi, for a cyber risk management function, they only had a really small team. And so I joined, I like to call it, like at the ground floor. When I joined, there was a couple of people on the team. As I'm acting director now, we have about 26 on the team, and we're looking to grow also. And I'll get to a little bit of the details on why that is. And then lastly, and I'm here today presenting a business that I started as well, called AIS in Cyber. And I'll speak to that a little bit more further down. Before I kick things off, a couple things. I speak quick, and I may say acronyms, right, that you may not be familiar with. So please take notes and ask me, whatever you feel like for some of this. My favorite slide. Okay. So the road to mastery. I love this. This is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And so this is, everybody here is, in school. Some of you are already in your career. Some of you are starting. And so I love looking at this because this tells you exactly, these are some of the sentiments, right? These are some of the feelings that you have when you start anything new, like learning how to ride a bike, moving into cybersecurity. And so very early on, you're at the peak. I know everything. I rode a bike yesterday. I can do this with my eyes closed, right? And then with time and with knowledge, you actually realize, you know what? I actually don't know that much. And then you start going down to here, into where it says culture on the slide. And so I like to call that the zone of comfort. That's where you would know enough to answer a question, but you're not the master, or you're not the subject matter expert yet. And so I always refer to this throughout my career, because I think this is a fantastic way to sort of gauge where you are as you make your way, through school, through your master's programs, and into your careers. Very few people will say that they're experts, and that's rightfully so, especially in cybersecurity. I don't think there's an expert out there. There's people that know a lot about certain topics. There's no way in cybersecurity, given how vast it is. I'll get into some of the details. It is way too vast. I don't think anybody's an expert in my opinion, in my non-expert opinion. Okay, so cybersecurity and business, right? I just want to lay the foundation for everybody, and I specifically titled it that because it's not business and cybersecurity. So business, shortly, basically put, business is commerce that goes on in pursuit of revenue. We're trying to generate revenues. We're trying to please the customer. We're selling them a product. It could be a service. And so there's a saying now that every company is a technology company. So for anybody in the audience who's looking to start a company, I don't care if you're starting a movie company or if you're starting a cybersecurity company, you're going to be using technology. That's the core that all companies use. And so in doing that, there's a lot of prudent care that you have to give your clients. Right? You want to make sure your customers are safe. They're interacting with your business again in a way that doesn't pose them extra risk. You don't want them hacked and so forth. And so there's a few things that for cybersecurity we look to protect. And so I'll just read it out. So it's PII, so that's personally identifiable information. So that's anything like your social security number, your address, your phone number, and so forth. That's some of the stuff you don't want leaked, right, as part of your business. We have MNPI, which is material non-public information. So that's something like it could be like merger and acquisition information. It could be very sensitive details that nobody in the public should know yet. But again, it's our duty as business owners to actually protect that information. More often now, you'll see PHI, that's personal health information. And so in the last couple of years, there's been several hospitals that were hacked. And as you can imagine, a lot of patient details are now leaked. So that's PHI. Basically, anything that your company uses, all the what I call competitive intelligence that your company has and that you're looking to protect, that's basically what cybersecurity comes down to. So you're trying to protect the secret sauce or the secret recipe, right, of how your business operates, how you're generating revenues, who your clients are. And intellectual property as well. Again, anything that is tied to your business. Right? So that's business. And then on the flip side of it, so again, like I mentioned, technology enables the business. On the flip side of it, you have a lot of cybersecurity related incidents, right? It can be hacks, breaches. You see these on the media all the time. And so just again, laying the foundation, all cyber incidents, they attack at least one of these three categories, which is the CIA triad. It's a famous term that's used. So confidentiality is where we're looking to keep our information confidential. I have information on my client. I need to make sure that a third party doesn't do something. You have integrity. I sent an email. Was it altered or tampered with along the way? Maybe not. Right? And so integrity is, again, we're trying to make sure that the message I'm sending gets to the recipient without being tampered or eavesdropped on. And then the last one is availability. When we wake up in the morning, we get the light switch. We don't think, will the lights turn on today, yes or no? It just happens, right? And so that's availability in terms of software. As a customer, I go into citibank.com to log in. By default, I know it's going to work. So if you can imagine, if you take a step back, just imagine what if that service goes down to customers. Like that's a tremendous impact. If you have 10 million customers and only 1% can't access the system, that's actually a huge population of the customers, right? So again, for availability, you want to make sure your systems and data are always available to your customers. Types of cyber attacks. This is listed in really low order number. And secondly, this is not a comprehensive list because cyber, once you start going down the rabbit hole, you'll learn there's so many different types of attacks. There's so many different types of denial of service. There's so many different things that can happen. So I'll just touch on some of the major ones. Again, in the media, you'll likely have seen ransomware and malware attacks. Those are actually pretty prevalent. And I'll speak specifically to ransomware. Ransomware is where a threat actor, a hacker, whatever you want to call it, takes over your system or application and then locks that information up and says, pay me 5,000 Bitcoin and then I'll unlock it. And so if you can imagine, again, using the banking analogy, if you have a service that's now locked by a threat actor, customers can't access it. And now you're basically, you're in a really difficult position as a chief information security officer. You either have to pay the ransom or you have to somehow, again, unlock the system so your customers can access it. There's been so many outages, again, for the CIS videos. You're likely have seen in the media. Many different companies have been hacked recently. Every week there's a new breach. There's two types of things, and this is something I don't think you'll read like in the textbooks. A lot of companies understand that there's a massive reputation. So say Baruch AIS, they'll be all over the papers, it's all over the news. So now as a customer, you are all customers, students of Baruch. We now have a different perception of Baruch. They didn't handle my information with care. They didn't protect me. Now my social and all of my information is on the internet. There's such a tremendous impact, right? And so ransomware, again, what a lot of threat actors do is they take that information and they hold it against you. Right? Social engineering, that's basically where somebody from the outside pretends they're on the inside. So it's if I go up to the security guard downstairs and say, hey, say I'm not affiliated with Baruch. If I don't have an ID, oh, you know what? I left my bag upstairs. Would you let me in just for a few minutes, right? And the security guard, of course, yeah, you can go ahead and get it. And now I'm in the environment. And so I socially engineered my way into the environment where I shouldn't have been able to. Corruption of files and backups. This you'll see quite often. This again is where a hacker gets into an environment and then starts basically corrupting some of the files. Right? Like I talked about integrity before. You can, you have a breach overnight. Folks come, your staff comes in the morning. Now they can't trust the data that's in. I'm using this database that has all this client information. Is that the real client information, or was it altered in any way? Distributed denial of service. That's an easy one. It's either called a DOS attack, denial of service, or DDoS, distributed denial of service. That's where a threat actor is able to, for a login attempt, Citibank Online. You go to log in, and the threat actor is now sending thousands of login requests to that system, and it literally slows the system and ultimately it crashes. And so now you, a regular customer, can't access that information. So again, a huge problem for companies. There's application attacks and then website defacement. That's, I think, the most trivial in the sense that it's just, a threat actor replacing the website landing page. It could be a political message. It could be, just teenagers just having fun and writing something funny on there. But again, all of these, the underlying thing you have to remember is that all of these will impact reputation. And reputation is something you can't rebuild easily. Like you could, it could be the best company, the most reliable, trusted company. After one breach, if you look at the Twitter analytics and look at the sentiment, you're going to see the sentiment nosedive. Everybody's going to say, this company was hacked. They didn't do enough to protect my information, right? So it's a huge problem. I wanted to talk to a little bit about duration of attacks. I'm not sure, again, like the level of expertise that in the room. A lot of people think, like in the movies, it's portrayed as if somebody breaks into the system, they're in, and now they're doing all sorts of stuff. The best hackers do the complete opposite. The best hackers will be able to get into an environment and lay very, very low. They're not going to trip any alarm. They're not going to do anything. Again, they're not going to trip any semantic or any crouch like any of those alerts. And so for the large companies, their security operations center has no clue that somebody from the outside is in. And so what they do when they're in the environment is they actually lay very low and not raising any suspicion. And they stay there for months and sometimes years, which is unheard of. If you can imagine you have a staff, a company of about 1,000 folks, and imagine that there's hackers in the environment watching everything going on your network during that time. Right? So it's quite a bit of risk to the firm. So that's the common misconception I just wanted to point out here is that it's not like I'm in and now I'm stealing all the information. It's I'm in and now I'm performing reconnaissance. In this company I just broke into, what's the most critical software that they're using? What's the most critical information? Is it customer information or is it dealer information? They have enough access into the environment just like they were a staff member. So again, as the hairs on your arm should be rising because it's quite an alarming thing. What are the consequences? I spoke to some of these already. You'll have service disruption, of course, your business goes offline. We were offline for an hour. Okay. For a large company, that 1 hour actually leads to millions of dollars of loss, right? Tremendous problem there. Data exfiltration. So this is one of the more serious ones in the sense that once you lose control of your data, once I intercept an email I sent to somebody and I post it out on the internet, you have lost complete control of it. And the assumption is that even if you reach out to the companies that have it posted and you take it down from a handful of sites, the way that the internet works is everything is mirrored. And so you'll continue to see that information pop a year down the road. And AT&T was recently breached. I don't know, maybe some of you were back when I wasn't back. And then I get an alert from AT&T saying your password, your email address, and a couple other details are now on the dark web. People are selling them. And so you can hire these other companies to actually scrape that data and get it off the internet. But then if you go back in 3 months to 6 months, you'll see it back up here again. So it's a very vicious cycle, and that's why cybersecurity is so important. We need to make sure very sensitive information stays internal. It's only the folks that need to know that information that have access to it. There's that, data infrastructure is right. So I just spoke to the fourth bullet, right? MNPI, PII. All those secrets are now public. For the company, the cost incurred to rebuild the environment. So say we had a ransomware attack, and it impacted 20 systems. You are now paying staff to rebuild those systems, right? And not only that, the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer at the company, can't sleep at night. You know why? Okay, we've rebuilt the environment, everything seems to be working normally. But again, picture that a threat actor was in the environment for years. So not only did they impact that one system, they could have put a backdoor or something allowing them to regain access months later. So it's a very, very serious problem to sort of stop them leading. Reputational damage, I mentioned, that's the toughest one, just because the second something bad happens to your company, image is tarnished, and now it's very difficult to rebuild. And again, usually time is the one that hits. Like, so if you have a breach today, and again, the reputation is tarnished, usually a couple of years out. Again, as society, they don't remember the event, or you've improved your controls. Hopefully, you're now able to demonstrate to your customers that now I'm handling the data properly and securely. Trust us again. Lateral movement is a huge, huge problem. So second and last one. A lot of the really good hackers understand that Citi has a ton of, all banks, a lot of banks, have very, very strong control. They have antivirus, they have firewalls, and they spend millions of dollars to make sure that they're protected. And so lateral movement, all the best hackers won't go after the price target. If I'm trying to rob a bank, I'm not going to go into the front door, right, and try to rob it. What they try to do is say, okay, the bank is here, but then next to it is a different business. Maybe I can break into that business and eventually get into the bank. And so that's what lateral movement is. It's where a threat actor will attack a third party that Citi is partnered with that has much lower, maturity or security, break into them and then piggyback onto and get into the Citi environment. And that's what lateral movement is. And that's a tremendous concern. And again, you'll see that a lot in the media. Regulatory notifications and fines. This is also another big one. The US government regulates all banks, right? And again, banks, pharmaceuticals, law firms, there's several other industries where we'll see this regulation. The government understands that this entity that's operating, Citigroup, we call it Baruch, we have a lot of information that we need to protect. And if there's any lapse, if we, again, if somebody's compromised via phishing, if there's a data set that's compromised, right, again, that has sensitive data, regulators are going to come and scream, basically, you're going to get fined, right? Baruch can be fined. A lot of banks are fined, and I think again, you'll see that in the media, for not taking proper care. Bank of America had this one data leak, and 100,000 clients' information was leaked. The regulators come and say, you know what, Bank of America, you did not do enough to protect your customers, and it's basically penalizing them. And the toughest part there is you as a company. So say we're Bank of America, we now have to demonstrate to the regulators, like, look, actually, we had that breach. These are the steps that we took to actually fix it. We won't have to make it. So there's that. And again, some of these fines are very steep, tens of millions of dollars. So this is the big question, right? So like I alluded to it earlier. So we have a ransomware group, they break into your environment, they lock up some systems. Do you pay the ransom or no? No. No, why?
Because if I pay still there, there's still my back data, so I don't need to pay. I will make new one.
100%. Yeah, that's exactly it. The answer is you don't want to pay. So historically, again, as a chief information security officer, if you're telling me my entire, my application that all my customers use are now locked up, I'm in a really tough position. You know what? I'll pay the $1,000. Here's $1,000. Just give me back my data. I just to solve the problem. The thing is, as we all know, there's no honor amongst thieves. And so once you pay the ransom, wonderful, you get access to your applications back. But like I mentioned before, they could have planted another backdoor. Secondly, the way that they got in was likely through a software bug. The applications may not be now as reliable as they were prior. So there's a lot of issues with paying ransom. And I think the bigger note now, and this goes back to regulators, starting from, I know the Trump administration started it, and now the Biden administration is doubling down. Any payment made to a ransomware group is categorized as funding terrorism. Right? And so now the government is saying this to all banks. Anybody that has this issue with a ransomware, first of all, get better at it, prevent it from happening. But secondly is don't pay the ransom, regardless of how much it is, because you can never trust those systems again. So now you wind up double paying. You pay the ransom, and now I don't trust these systems anymore. Now you have to rebuild from scratch. Now you pay twice. And is my environment secure now? That's what that question, the last question, that keeps CISOs up all the time, all the time, whether breached or not. It's just, is my environment secure? Is everything breached? I'm just going to pause for a second. Any questions so far? Any comments? So a lot of times when we talk about hackers, it just seems like it's this abstract enemy. We're fighting this invisible enemy. And so this is just one of them. There's a ton of live threat names that we've seen. And basically this is from radware.com. You go into their site and it's actually a live animation. Again, this is just a screenshot, but these blue lines represent attacker to victim, attacker to victim. So you'll see a lot going from, China to the US, US to China, and so forth. And I think these are really good to see because you can actually visualize what the hackers look like. And again, it's not something that happens once in a while. Like this is ongoing all the time. And if this was if I had the sign up, you would see this happening every second there's an announcement. And that doesn't mean that there's millions of people that literally attack the keyboard. A lot of these are automated. So they use script. They can literally launch a script today and it will start the attack tomorrow, or whenever they want. But this is really useful to see because on the right-hand side, I know the print is too small, but it shows the top application violations, like how a system is being attacked, how is it being attacked. So you have that listed here. You also have the top attackers, like I mentioned, the countries, right? The countries involved. Okay, I've been using the term like threat actors, bad guys, hackers. So like let's look at what that group looks like, because that's just one again general group. And so what I've listed here, again, not a complete list, is all of the threat actors, all the way from opportunists down to nation state actors. And it's listed this way because up at the top are the least sophisticated, meaning this could be literally just a teenager, who downloads a script, points it at a vulnerable, bankofamerica.com server, and boom, he's able to take it over. So that's the least sophisticated because he's going directly up to the target, doesn't know much about it. He just ran a script and crosses his fingers, right? And voila, he's in the environment. As we make our way down, the next most sophisticated you would see are hacktivists. And so we've had a lot of geopolitical unrest in recent years, right? There's a lot of wars going on, battles, fighting. And so what you'll often see now is as there's a physical war. In the past, whoever collects the most tanks, fighter jets, missiles, they're the most powerful. That's no longer the case now in cybersecurity because it's actually who has the most vulnerabilities. And as you can imagine, like if I'm trying to amass equipment software, that costs a lot of money. I may not be able to reach, I may not be on par with the United States for military or China. But on the cyber side, all you need is just the piece. You can do it on this computer that I'm using today. If you have the knowledge, it can be extremely dangerous. Just on a regular computer, and just one person. So you'll see that a lot. So you'll see in terms of hacktivism, a world breakout, and then the US will come out publicly and say, we support country X. The second any country makes a statement saying we support country X, they're then attacked by a cyber. And hacktivists, again, not so sophisticated, they perform the distributed denial of service. So they'll look at, say it's the US, they'll look at governments to try to bring them by sending them too many requests. Competitors, are competitors hackers? Yes or no, right? Legally you can. I'm Bank of America, you can see I cannot, and you know what I can do? Reconnaissance. So what I'm going to do is, this is the first step I'm going to do is I'm going to go onto LinkedIn, and I'm going to go to your profile, your profile, your profile, and see everything. They work for bankers. A lot of folks on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is actually the source of a lot of, it's the start of a lot of things. You'll see me, a proud engineer. I'm an engineer. I have a CISSP certification. I work with this, and this software. They list 20 different pieces of software they work with. That's fantastic. Oh, and my current employer is what you've given the bad guy is basically now a list of all the applications you've visited. And so again, not a lot of people think of it. They just want to get the LinkedIn. They want to make sure my name is out there. Hey, I use these 20 pieces of software, and it's actually a huge risk to the business. There's actually a lot of the larger companies, they restrict what you can even put on, which is very dangerous. And again, that's just a very trivial. You can do that today. You want to break into it, find the company, find a couple engineers, and you will literally find folks that this, all the technology. You're basically giving away the company secrets. That's competitors. Organized crime. This is an interesting one. For organized crime, there's two flavors, right? There's newer organized crime groups that actually do have the capability to develop ransoms and apply to a school, to a hospital system. We also have historical, traditional organized crime groups that don't have that expertise. So what you'll see often now in the industry is something called RAS, RAS, which is ransomware as a service, which is literally organized crime group contacts me and says, "Sir, I want to develop ransomware to take over my I said, okay, that'll be $10,000. And you're literally outsourcing the development of the software, and then eventually that crime group applies it to his environment and takes it. So it's literally like an as-service sort of a very scary stuff. Insider threat. I have to ask, why is insider threat weak?
The invalid like because
We just look, no, that's working. Why is insider threat such a big deal? 100%. 100% that, exactly. I was expecting a bonus of X. I didn't get this. Right? I've been loyal to the company. I've been here 20 years. You know, the work that I do as an engineer keeps the building afloat, keeps the lights on. I cannot believe they didn't give me the bonus that I wanted. Now I'm upset. So now with the access I have, all the access that I have were all now tools to do my job. These are all now tools I can use to complete ops. I can bring down the environment. I can turn off the lights, I can turn off the presentation. So very scary to think of. So a lot of companies, they obviously try to defend from attacks from the engineer. But what you're seeing a lot now is literally companies setting up environments to make it very difficult for even employees to get access to sensitive information. And say again, I'm an admin assistant. I have access to the CEO's calendar. Even that, we're starting to limit to. So you'll see it's called privilege management, where basically any single privilege item is number one. It's categorized. As an admin assistant, I may have 100 privileges, and on an annual basis, we double check. You know, you've now been promoted. You still need access to the CEO's calendar, maybe not. You still need access to the payroll system, maybe not. And so that's how organizations are protecting themselves from inside. Nation state actors, right? This is you've seen all the time. Obviously, one's from mind, China, Russia, North Korea. Nation states are the most sophisticated attackers. This is what really keeps CISOs up. Because all of the other groups, they lack funding. Some of them, okay, they do have a lot of money that they put into their operations. But for a nation state, if I'm trying to compete with the US, I have unlimited resources. I have government. So what I'm going to do is this: I'm going to hire 20 of the best hackers in my country, and I'm going to give them one mission. You know what? Bring it to Microsoft. Okay. There's no time on it. They didn't say tomorrow. They didn't say. They basically have the luxury of time to get access to Microsoft. Like I mentioned, once they're in, they're not starting to exploit everything. They get in, and then they lay low. Okay, what's going on in the environment? Right? What are the critical systems? Who are the critical people I need to? And so a lot of them, they literally, again, from a nation state perspective, they know the environment just as well as an employee that's been there for years.
so are there any ways that they can identify the hackers that they are collecting their information?
Yeah, so a lot of companies they spend millions. So the question was, how can the company figure out what's happening in the environment? It's really good hackers who won't even know, who will never know. So cybersecurity is basically who has better information. Us is that. So as of today, we have very good information. So we want the latest tool. We have CrowdStrike. We have a web application firewall. We have all of these different verticals that we put in the way so the bad guys can't get to this sensitive information. On the flip side of it, the threat actors, they already know those companies. Like they hire the best of the best. So if you tell me we have the latest analytics, the bad guys already have 20 ways to call that. There's to answer your question, because they're so good at laying low, they will almost never be caught. That's why some of the major hacks, Sony was a really good one. I'll talk about that in a little bit. When Sony was breached, the hackers basically owned the entire environment. They took down every application. They found out where the movies are stored. They took the movies and they published it online. So you were able to see this 14. A lot of the sense there was simply CEO emails, private emails from CEO to CEO that were all leaked. This is the level of access to the environment. So that doesn't mean they showed up this morning and broke in. That means that they broke in and laid low and they figured out the systems. And they mapped it out. And again, they have as good as an understanding. The hackers have as good as an understanding as the staff themselves, which is very scary to imagine. So how do we protect against them? So I'm just going to briefly touch on it. And I mentioned it before, right? Who has better information here? And that's basically what information is morphing. And so the way that companies protect themselves is they adopt something called intelligence-led operations. That's basically, the banks you see quite often, they have contacts within the NSA, within the FBI, within a lot of other government agencies. They also have paid intelligence means as well. And so what they do is they're getting all this information from these 20 sources and then making sense of it. Because if Bank of America is attacked first, you know what? If they were attacked by a nation state, maybe cities also, maybe Southern Bank is a problem, Pakistan is a problem. So what they want to do is doing a lot of information sharing. Because again, we, the good guys, always want that to be able to hand right, on the threat actors. So what you want to do is, again, like I have this list here, opportunists, all the nation state actors. You want to sort of start profiling them. Profiling meaning, okay, an opportunist, how do they have my environment, right? A nation state, how do they have my environment? What are they looking at? What are they looking at? Do they just want to break down our systems? Do they want to steal climate information? Do they want to steal money? The obvious ones. And so the way that companies get good at it is the third bullet, bottom line, the last one, which is to sharpen their incident response capability. It is a guarantee that you can do that. There's no 100% secure environment, even like a building. There's no 100% security. You can have 100 guards at the door. Somebody's going to come into a window, figuratively speaking. And so to do that, that's basically getting your operations set in a way where once we do identify does that fit the environment, how do we stop it bleeding immediately? How do we contain the ongoing incident as quick as we can? Again, saving any, saving additional exfiltration, but also keeping ourselves safe. Right? And that's again, companies spend multi-million dollars building out their security operations on the stocks, building out the stock, building out the intelligence function. So hacking is pretty lucrative, right? A lot of folks are getting paid in Bitcoin. I have this one here that I just wanted to show everybody, and I'll read it out loud because I know it's not fun. U.S. charges Venezuelan doctor with selling ransom used by Iranian people. Right? So this is huge. So in Venezuela, there's a cardiologist. His 9 to 5 is a cardiologist. Saw patients day in and day out. At night, he was literally a ransomware developer. That's how lucrative this is. He was arrested by the U.S. authorities. This is going back to 2022. Yeah, 2022. If, like, just imagine you're a doctor, right, in your country, right? Notable field, notable profession, and on your side name is basically writing ransom. This is the fine point to be. But this tells you again how lucrative it is because you're paid in Bitcoin. It's not impossible to track Bitcoin payments, but it's very difficult to track. And so this I always find fascinating. Just like, what would propel a doctor to get into the ransomware business? This I'm going to cover briefly. My good on time. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. So okay, all of us are starting a company. Fantastic. Congratulations. How do we start sort of putting a plan in place to protect our organization? So we have here GRC, which is basically governance, risk management, and compliance. This is just like a framework all companies use to adopt cybersecurity. So governance is the easy one. This is the standard. What's our standard here in the environment? So you're all staff in this company. What's the standard? Are we using Windows? Are we using Construct? Are we using Semantic, McAfee, and so forth? What are the applications, right? And once we've established it, that has to get written down. Because once you formalize it in a policy, that's what basically everybody in the company abides by. The more useful example would be like something called an acceptable use policy. Any company you join, you're going to get the first policy you get is acceptable use. Basically says when you're in our environment, these are the rules that you have to abide by. You cannot try to access systems that you're not getting access to, right? You can't try to steal data, right? If I'm giving you access to customer information, you have to guarantee me you're not going to take out 100 customers' data. Again, posing a disruptive company. So what I would say here was the second bullet there, which is cyber risk management. And so if you take this as an example. A lot of companies, right? So say I'm working in the security operations. My CISO comes and says, hey, how are we doing? How secure are we? There's a conflict of interest because I'm only going to give him one answer, which is we are fantastic. Okay? We're doing so well, our security is amazing, nobody's ever going to hack us. You can sleep well at that. And so that's a tremendous, if you can imagine, like for the regulars, a huge conflict of interest. Because not only am I the person checking to see if we're hacked, but I'm also the one reporting it, which should never be the case. This goes back to the one like they use it, they call it like a maker checker. But a regular check can also be the one stamping and saying yes, it's approved. So you have to have two different folks. So that's basically what my team does is cyber risk management. So the way that I refer to it, like an analogy, the security operations center. So these are the guys that actually manage security. Those are the firefighters. And so my team, what we do is we watch the firefighters. And we look at the techniques they're using to defend the company. Are they using the best tools? Are they using outdated tools, right? Or do they have the best processes in place, right? We were notified at 9 a.m. there was a breach, and by 9 p.m. we plugged the hole and we contained that breach. Pat on the back, right? Absolutely not. The quite opposite. Why did it take 12 hours for us to identify and mitigate that attack? And so this is basically the question of the EMS of the fire, the first line of this. Is why did it take so long to do that? And so then that's what we bring in the magnifying glass. We'll say, okay, containment actually occurred now, but locking their credentials to other 11 things. Why? Right? And so we're trying to slowly get better and better at our operations. And again, regulatory oversight. So if we're breached, guess what? We can't sweep it under the rug. If we know that client information is taken, we have to go scream to the regulators. And regulators, we had a breach. Our bad, 1,000 records. So again, there's a tremendous, and again, regulators come back to the client. So there's a tremendous obligation to our customers to security. Compliance goes again, it's related to regulatory. Compliance is where the government has stated like these are the ways that you can keep customer information secure. We have to make sure on our side as the firm that we're abiding by it. If you breach compliance, again, you have a fine coming through. This is basically the policy all the way down to baselines. This is sort of again like the approach that we're going to use as we develop our business, right? We're going to start with the policy, standards, and then so forth all the way down to baselines. I've talked a lot about just like a lot of foundation stuff. So now this is the future. I touched a little bit on geopolitical. Geopolitical again are the wars that you see coming up, and then the subsequent cyber attacks that stem from there. Quantum computing is a big one. So, like I mentioned, you're going to get folks that you're going to get hackers that break into the environment, and oftentimes they'll steal an entire database. They now have 100 gigabyte database customers. The company is going to say that's no risk at all. It's encrypted. They can't do anything with it. It's as good as guarded. To break the encryption on something like that, as of today, takes maybe 10 years. So 10 years of trying different passwords, trying different hashes, we're able to get to that information. With quantum computing, that 10-year process is going to take a few months. So it's a very, very scary thing that's going on right now. And so the government is looking at what are the next generation algorithms that we can use. Because right now, there's a couple of different ways that we secure data, like when you log into your banking. We're using 256-bit encryption. In a few years' time, when quantum computers are commercially viable, and meaning like anybody can buy one, you're going to see obviously our nation states are going to start buying those computers. And they're going to say, aha, we have this big database from Citigroup we got a decade ago. We are now going to decrypt it because now we have the capability to do so. So there's nation states, there's hackers just hoarding all of this information that they're stealing. Zero trust architecture, right? So I mentioned I'm a bad guy, I break into an environment, I lay low. I watch everything going on. So zero trust architecture is interesting because I mentioned lateral movement, where you break into one company and then you can move on to others. Zero trust computing basically compartmentalizes all of your access. And just to use the building as an analogy, the traditional method was I have a group ID code, I get into the front door, the second I scan and I walk through the gate, I can get to any room I want, get to any floor, and bathroom, any lab, anything, relatively speaking. Zero trust computing is going to be the opposite, where I get into the lobby, okay, that's wonderful. Now, what floors do I have access to? I only have access to the first floor and the cafeteria. So that's very limited. So again, if I'm able to get to the first one cafeteria, that may prevent me, the bad guy, from going to the lab or the data center, the data centers up here. Cloud computing is a big one. Companies were slow to adopt cloud. And again, like I mentioned, there's a lot of competitive intelligence. Right? Like what makes your company your company? What's the algorithm? What's the secret data that you have? With cloud computing, you're seeing more and more companies move really franchise critical applications into the cloud. And that's scary because again, you are now expecting that third-party company you're using for cloud, could be Google, could be Amazon, Microsoft. You're expecting them now to uphold your reputation. So now instead of somebody attacking Citi, they're going to attack Amazon. Oh, by the way, they host Citi systems. So now they'll have that access as well. So a tremendous risk there. Third party I mentioned, that's when you bring into a company that has less security and move on to a major one. This is a fun one. Anybody here using ChatGPT? Everybody, exactly. That's the exactly. ChatGPT, there's so many benefits. But the issue being, again, you can also use for bad. And so there's actually, Google it. only on the weekend, not Monday to Friday. Google Worm GPT. So Worm GPT is basically an AI system that's been created for the bad guys. Where I, as a bad guy, I'm trying to break into Baruch's website, I'm going to say, okay, I'm trying to break into an environment that has this version of Windows, this version of firewall. These are the 20 controls in place. How do I do it? Question mark. Enter. And it'll literally give you, a step-by-step 25 step on how to navigate all these different hurdles. So it's extremely scary to think about. You can even have it write code and say, I want to develop ransomware that attacks Zoom. Okay. You can do that with one GPT. It's very, very scary what's going on. Again, like there's so many benefits of chat for GPT, but then on the flip side of it, you have a chat GPT for bad guys, right? One GPT. Okay, I think everybody's been waiting for this part of this section. How do I get started in cybersecurity? I just broke it up into two different buckets, hard credentials and soft credentials. So hard credentials, I call it, this is what gets you into the door of HR. You don't have a bachelor's degree, you don't have, depending on the role, you don't have a bachelor's degree, you don't have a master's degree, no certification. Well, we have other candidates, right? So like you're not considered. Getting a degree, getting the certifications, taking a course in the Coursera, that's what gets your foot in the door of HR. HR says, aha, this person has a master's in cybersecurity, they have these certifications, okay. Let's bet them. So now we're going from 500 applicants, you're now down to 10 that have these qualifications. So that's this hard credentials bucket, and jokingly, these are the easy ones to get, right? This is, you're just ticking the box. I have a BA, I have a MS degree, I have a CSSP. The second part of the soft credentials, this is, I think, the really difficult part. And as a hiring manager, I see it quite often. There's a lot of folks that have a lot of the hard credentials, right? They made their way in, but then at the interview, they don't excel. They don't know what to say. And so the one thing I want to emphasize, like this is regardless of what career you're going, whether it's cybersecurity or otherwise, regardless of how much money you have, regardless of what you've done in your life and on your everything, all of us in the room have only one chance to make a first impression. So when you're speaking to HR, when you land that first interview, it is absolutely critical. First, the first bullet under soft credentials, that you have communication skills, right? Why are you interested in cybersecurity? Right? You have to be able to tell the narrative. And you have to link your experience, or why did you do a bachelor's in English, and an MBA in information systems, right? And that's a question I get quite often. And you have to be able to articulate how the two are related. You can't just say, oh, by accident I got this degree, or so there's that. So that's the most critical part, is you're able to tell a story why. Because then, to me, the hiring manager, that says, you know what, this person's actually thought about their career, thought about what they want to do, and they're actually taking these steps to do it. They didn't just land in cybersecurity. Or they're not just looking for cybersecurity roles just because it's the hot thing right now. 50-50 technical and non-technical. So a lot of people think, I'm going to learn this application inside out, and all the doors are going to be swung open for me. That's the complete opposite, because as a senior leader, oftentimes we'll have a very, very good technical person, and they come screaming to me and say, hey, we have this application, the SQL injection attack against our servers. Okay. But to a senior leader, that means, that's in another language, practically. You have to demonstrate, explain to me why that's such a big deal. Oh, we're getting attacked in this way against this application. Oh, by the way, $1 billion goes through that application on a daily basis. Now you have my attention. Like, so it's being able to articulate, like, why is this such a big deal? And again, it comes into, it's so crucial in cybersecurity, because I see it all the time when I'm interviewing folks, is that they tick all the boxes, and it's fantastic. And then it comes to a point where, again, like, you're trying to explain to me why something technical is a big deal, and they don't have that skill. So that's like one of the soft skills I think I encourage everybody to develop, is be able to, in 2 sentences, explain to me why it's a big deal. Creative mindset and curiosity. The slide that I had earlier, and we'll go all the way back to it because it's important. This guy, the road to mastery. So generally speaking, they say anything you pick up golf today, you've never held a golf club before, you pick up cybersecurity, it takes about 10,000 hours of time that you put into that field to get in. And I'm using mastery in quotes. You're not the expert, right, in that case, but you're working on it. So you're getting to that level, and that's critical. Because cybersecurity, again, it's a game of information. Who has more better information, me, the company, or the hacker? And so it's critical to always remain curious and to always really keep your skills up to date. Because you can be, an SME on one piece of software, that's great, but now tomorrow there's a better one out. There's a more improved piece of software. So again, you have to keep that creative mindset. So like I mentioned, I see that often as a hiring managers, like we've had folks come through and eventually they parted ways also. They tick all the boxes, but they don't have that motivation, which can be taught. And so that's actually why last year I started my company called AIS in Cyber, and we do a couple of things. Number one is we advise companies on how to build out their security operations departments. And secondly, and this is why I'm here today in front of my distinguished students, is actually academic. And so it's a program that I've developed. It's a really immersive 4-month program. It really pushes you into the deep end of cybersecurity. Meaning, the intent is, again, is to you get a lot of the academic work, right? Then at school, right? You have the certification, that's wonderful. But what does a day-to-day life look like to a sound engineer, to a systems architect? What does that look like on a day-to-day basis? And so my program is sort of in place there to bridge the gap between the academic and actually what you see in real life, right? What you see on Wall Street. And I just want to say one thing related to this. All of us are super privileged, whether or not you know it. Each and every one of us live within proximity to some of the biggest banks in the world, the biggest legal firms, the biggest hospital systems. Like, it's such a tremendous opportunity. The second you leave this building, you live in DC, you're literally a 6 train ride away from literally Wall Street. And so the point of my program is to really capitalize on that opportunity. It's not just to prep people for like an entry-level role, but it's to prep people, like when you get to an interview, it's to really knock it out of the park. Where the interviewer will say, you know what, this person absolutely knew what they were talking about. They didn't just come in and say, okay, I have these degrees now, where's my job? The complete opposite. That you're able to demonstrate motivation. You're able to demonstrate that you're able to understand really, really complex ideas, and then distill to a senior leader why is this a big deal. We're hacked with this application's hacked, big deal. Why are you bothering me? I have 1,000 other things to do. So that's basically the point of my program, is to be that stepping stone from academia all the way up to very, very senior influential roles in cybersecurity. Because again, there's just that huge gap that I see now. And again, a lot of banks, you'll see that also, is you'll get everybody that ticks the boxes, but there's nobody that really gets your attention. And so that's why I developed this program. You have my information on here, my website, my LinkedIn, also my email address. Feel free to reach out to any questions. More than happy to answer. With that being said, I think that was everything. Appreciate the time, John. Now this is my favorite part, the Q&A.
Yes, someone asked.
Please.
Anything can be reached regardless of IT. How can cybersecurity is implemented
In health business?
Yeah.
Awesome question, right? So what we saw during the pandemic was what? All hospital systems were flooded with COVID codes, right? They couldn't even handle it, right? So a lot of, again, you saw the leadership come in, right, to sort of help with some of the load. One of the sad stats that came out of the pandemic is that a lot of ransomware groups said, you know what? Hospitals don't have a lot of money, and hospitals aren't as secure. So what if, during this really crazy period, I lock down Memorial Sloan Kettering? And so there were a ton of attacks on the hospital systems over the last few years. And I think the stat from 2016 to 2021, in that period, listen to this, related to ransomware, there was almost 70 deaths related to ransomware. Because the bad guys come in and they lock up all the terminals that the nurses are using. And I'm a nurse, and I'm about to give this patient medicine. I don't know those. It was all in the system and follow. And so there's almost 70 people that died directly related to cybersecurity and ransomware, which doesn't, it's about my mind. It's such a sad figure, right? And so again, this goes back to the point of the unknown disease, right? They're low-hanging fruit, they're an easy victim, right? I'm going to go after the hospital systems first because they can't defend themselves. And what's the hospital system going to do? They're going to wait a month and say, oh, let me think about the ransomware thing. 1,000 Bitcoin, maybe I'll pay, maybe I won't. Quite the opposite. Either they're going to pay the ransomware or they're going to rebuild their environment from scratch. So it's a very, very scary statistic. There's no, to answer your question, there's no 100%, like I mentioned in the presentation. There's no 100% secure solution. This goes back to the point of information warfare. Right? Do we have, who has more better information, us or bad guys? And the answer is both of us do. And it goes back and forth. So where the bad guys learn a new vulnerability in Zoom to reach our network, on our side, we have to work with the Zoom vendor and then patch them. And then again, we find a vulnerability in Office, and then we have to patch it again. So it's a constant battle between both sides of who has the highest quality information. Yeah. So there's no, the answer, there's no 100% security of anything. Any other questions? And my style is I want the hardest questions. You may have a question in your mind that's really, really difficult. That's what I want to hear first.
This is my last and like, I tried to apply for job many places and everywhere is asking me 2 years, 3 years experience and stuff.
Yeah.
What should be the biggest study for us to apply for a job?
Awesome. So the question was a lot of jobs, entry-level jobs require experience that you don't have. It's an entry-level job. How am I magically have 3 years on the job? It's my first. So that's a fantastic question. So several ways to go about that. Number one would be to join an association like AIS and see where you can put a helping hand. A lot of the technologies that Baruch uses, guess what? Also are used in the private sector as well. And so just learning the technology, again, you don't have to be the SME, the subject matter expert of it overnight. But just having knowledge of certain systems and knowledge of how they work and how they're interdependent, that goes a very long way when you're interviewing. Because if you interview and they say, you have experience with that, like X, Y, and Z, and you say no, likely you're discounted right from the interview. No matter how well you do in any other area, and you have a PhD and you have these 15 certifications, it's irrelevant. So the most important thing is to have experience in the tools that for the jobs you're applying, so you can speak to them intelligently. You use CrowdStrike in your environment. I have experience with CrowdStrike. I've done X, Y, and Z. To sort of, and again, like really study like the job descriptions. They are actually very telling of what they're looking for. And my personal style, and it's worked well for a lot of folks I've taught like under my program. What's your dream job, entry-level job? So say it's a SOC engineer, for example. So you want to go to Citibank.com, you can go to Bank of America, you're going to go to these different companies and look at their career pages and pull the SOC roles from each, and then see what are the commonalities. Citi says they're looking for a CrowdStrike engineer. Okay, Bank of America is also. So maybe CrowdStrike is a tool I should look at. Or they're using AWS, right, cloud services. Maybe that's something I should look at as well. So I think one of the biggest ways that you can get a job even without the experience is demonstrate to them, because you only have, and I have to emphasize this, right? You only have one time to make a good impression, right? Demonstrate to them in the first 10 minutes of the interview that you know what you're talking about. And you know why I applied for this role? Because I think I'm the perfect fit. You ask for these 5 pieces of software, and again, the job description I always say is like a best effort. Like nobody's going to have experience with those 25 applications or those 25 things that they listed. What they're looking for is somebody that ticks 20 of those boxes, or 19 of them. There's no golden, there's no right person again that have all that skill set, but you want to say, not only do I know these 19, I'm also trainable on the other ones, right? So I think that would go on really. And again, like back to my program, like what I want to do teach is the interviewing skill. Because as an interviewer, I've interviewed 100 people, I think, in the last year, right? Some of them, again, are extremely impressive, and those are the ones that go back to communications. I tell them, okay, use CrowdStrike, tell me about it. And they're able to articulate to me why it's a big deal, why they use it, what are some of the negatives, right? Not every piece of software is the best, right? What are some of the cons, right? So they're able to articulate that tells me they did their homework. They know that product, and they can likely join my team. And then again, help with that. So that would be a really good one. Certifications are another one, I would say. Certifications are hit or miss because again, going back to my slide on the hard credentials, right? Certifications will tick that box, right? You have a BA, you have an MS, you have these 3 certs, fantastic, welcome. Right? HR opens the door. Now you're on your own. Now you have to demonstrate that a lot of that, like, okay, why is this the right person for the role? What experience do you have that you've done prior that'll help you in this role? One point I don't think I really mentioned is on the technical piece. Like I mentioned, getting involved with like AIS, volunteering where you can, just to get experience, because you may not be paid, but the experience sometimes is worth more than the money, right? So there's that. Another thing I recommend, and I did it earlier on in my career, is actually develop a lab environment. You don't have to take over, your kid's bedroom. Get a couple of spare laptops. You can get a virtual machine spun up. There's several websites also that have like competitions. Hack me, hack the box. There's so many different things. That again, like you do a few of those, and you get to the end, and what you do is step back and say, okay, from the 3 I did, these are some of the common techniques. These are some of the common tools that we're using. And again, that helps you learn more about the environment. And then on an interview, I'm going to say, okay, how do you get around AWS? You're going to say, aha, I did that on Hack Me or Hack the Box. And then you're going to be able to, again, talk intelligently about it. Because the point of the interview, and I always make this point, I always make the point to my 2 daughters. 2 + 2 = 4, fantastic. Answers 4. You pat on the back. Why is it 4? Right, so oftentimes I will focus on the answer. The answer is and again, it's an academic thing. The answer is this. The answer is this. That's fantastic. But why is this the answer? Articulate to me why is it for? Articulate to me why CrowdStrike is the best solution. Because right now that's a global standard. Everybody's moving to it. It's the hottest skill set to have right now. But why? Again, having that answer is great. That's 10% of the solution. 90% of it is the why. Why is it such a big deal? Why do we have to vote? Yeah. Hope that's helpful. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, I have one more question.
Please.
Someone said in the chat, how should we address inside the track? And how should I?
Yeah, so that's fantastic. Yeah. The question is, can you repeat a little louder?
Yeah, how should you address inside the tracks and unauthorized access to sensitive data?
Right. So I'll do the cyber threat part first. And excuse me, this goes back to the slide on the different threat actors. Right? Who's trying to hack us? Right? I just started a moving company. Right? I just started whatever company it is. You should make a list similar to this and say, okay, I have sensitive information. I want to work with high individuals. I cannot have this information let out. I can't have it breached. And so what I would do is a couple of things. Number one is make a list of who would try to hack. Maybe it's a competitor, the movie company, the bank, whatever it is. And the second most critical thing that it's so fundamental that nobody does it. And it's something that I think is would be a good point in an interview. Is you have the folks that are hacking, and then also you have what are they looking for? A lot of really, really big companies have servers all over the place. They have data all over the place. There are certain managers that I've approached and say, okay, you handle individual data. Where's that information stored? I don't know. Okay, who's the information used by? The banking, the retail side, right? Like they have, and it's so scary to hear that from like a senior leader. And so again, when you eventually make it to like these really complex organizations, that's one of the things is it's be very focused. Okay, we have this franchise critical application. We have, and again, just to use the example, Citibank Mobile Online, right? That's a crown jewel, right, for a bank, right? Like their customer-facing portal. Okay, who would be trying to hack? Okay, somebody who sent you the credentials. Okay, now it's all their financial information, social security number, like very sensitive details. Map out where in the environment it's going to, right? So that's one part of it, is knowing what you have its value. Step one. The second step would be to understand who has access to it. We have our company of 1,000 folks. 1,000 people are going to have access to the private customer information. Does that make sense? Absolutely not. You don't want to have the salesperson / admin assistant that has the same access as me, the CEO, to that type of information. And again, this sounds so like rudimentary, but in a really large environment, it is extremely tough / mission impossible to get to that level of understanding about the environment. You basically want to be able to say, you know what? You want to be able to name, okay, for the high net worth individuals, you should have literally a list. And we do it on this called identity and access management. This is a list of 100 folks in our company that have access to that information. Okay, they leave, information leave, okay. How, it likely was one of the 100. Sometimes it's not, depending on the type of breach, but that's sort of like the process of elimination when it is. Hope that was helpful. Could be any question. Could be anything at all. Does anybody want to pursue job in cybersecurity? Yeah. Yeah. It's an awesome time now, just because again, there's a lot of regulatory use. The private sector is always the advanced group, and everybody jokes that the government are always behind, and that's actually the case. The private sectors will have the best software and the best solutions, and the government, and you'll see them. NSA is hacking FBI, like all these large government agencies that have deep pockets, they get breached, right? And so you'll see a lot of linking between back and forth. And now, actually, I think the government's making progress, but I don't think it's enough. It's still enough. You'll still see them breached. And it's a hot topic now because again, government and the regulators just want to find banks. Right? Like you're not taking care of your Citibank. You have 200 million customers, and you're not taking care of their information. Here's the $100 million fine. And we were fined recently. And so what we want to be able to demonstrate to the regulators is, okay, look, we are actually taking prudent care of that information. This is how we do it, and being able to demonstrate.
Yeah, someone said in the chat, what are some common misconceptions about cybersecurity and how individuals and organizations
Yeah, so that's an awesome one. So yeah, common misconceptions about cybersecurity. Everybody thinks it's a 9 to 5. It is not a 9 to 5, unfortunately. Every time that you have downtime, there's another hacker that's awake that's trying to break in. And so a lot of private companies, they do something called a follow the sun model, which is where they'll have offices set up in, just going to hypothetically, New York, Singapore, and Budapest. Between the three of them, everybody does an 8-hour shift. So that way, I'm a SOC analyst, and I'm the one that's looking at the wire. And if there's any alerts that we're getting, it's 5 p.m. I've signed out for the day. You're in Budapest, and now transfer that over to you, like 99 management. And so again, the companies are spending so much money. They have 24-hour monitoring by setting up, the access sites and different sites. So that would be number one, is that they think it's a 9 to 5 and I can clock in and out. That's not how it works. Another common misconception is I have now this really famous certification. I can hang up my hat. I'm now the best of the best and the expert. And that's couldn't be further from the truth. Like I mentioned, you could be the expert today. A week from now, there's a new technology, ChatGPT, that can. Now that's taking over literally how many different cybersecurity roles. And the use of AI in defensive software is actually huge right now. And you'll see that a lot of the, at the current time, like a lot of the SOC analysts, the concern is that, we're going to be, they're going to outsource it to a robot, these roles. It's actually quite the opposite, because AI is going to say, you know what, we receive these 10 alerts, they're not a big deal, it's fine. It wasn't concerned, but then you as a SOC analyst, you're the human looking at the 10 and say, you know what, out of those 10, those 2 actually look a little bit concerning. We dig a little bit deeper. So you're going to have that AI component too, but there's also going to be that human need, and that's such a critical skill set to have. Because if I tell you 100 things that you're able to pick out, that 50th thing he said, that sounds like it was a pretty significant. Let me look into it further. Like that skill set is something that you can't teach ChatGPT. So that's another common misconception. Yeah, I think the other common one is the last one I'm going to say is just again like the hard credentials, right? That I mentioned. A lot of people think again like I have the degree, I have the certification, I'm golden, right? Now your hard work begins, right? Literally, the other side of it, knowing enough technical. Again, you don't have to be the guru, you don't have to understand every single piece of system software. But you need to be able to articulate to me like what are some themes, thematic, what keeps a chief information security officer up? What are they concerned about? Is it third-party risk? Is it supply chain risk? Is it concentration risk, right? We move to the cloud, we have everything in AWS, right? Fantastic job, pat on the back. What you've done now is put all of your eggs in one basket, basically. And so a lot of people are doing something called multi-tenant, which is where they have some systems in Azure, they have some in AWS, they have some on Google Cloud, right? Like to sort of distribute some of the risks like associated. So if any one goes down, you're still fine on the other 2, so to speak. Yeah, well, that was a great question.
Someone also asks, how do you stay with current trends, and do you have a certain website that you get for the day?
Yeah, so that's another awesome one. So for websites are reading, Bleeping Computer is a great one. And so the thing is this, with cybersecurity, there's some really major things that make it out into like public media. MGM hack, right? Sony hack, right? These are some of the big ones because a lot of those companies are customer facing. For some of the other ones, what I recommend is this. I mentioned the Sony hack a few times for a reason. I mentioned MGM hack also. The MGM hack happened a couple of years back, and if you remember, people couldn't check into their rooms, people couldn't get to parking, like the machines weren't even working, the slot machines. Like the hackers were in the environment for so long, they knew the environment inside out. And they know that one day, if I do this one command, I can shut down all of these, right? So like that's such an incredible skill to have. What you'll see is a lot of the big hacks that make it into the media. You'll have a lot of security researchers saying, Citibank was hacked. They're actually like one of the most secure places. How is that possible? And so what they'll do is they'll put together, it's like a forensic report basically of how Citibank was hacked. Right? Step 1, somebody compromised a credential. Step 2, they broke into a vendor. Step 3, they bounced from that vendor into Citibank. Eventually you'll see that. So that's something I think is really the most useful, because then again, if you analyze and look at the forensics on a lot of these attacks, you can step back and say, you know what the commonality was? The first 3 companies were breached by phishing. The other companies were breached because they didn't patch their systems, right? Like you sort of seeing more thematically, like how did those hacks? You don't need to know step by step what the hacker did, but just take a step back and say, what was their approach, right? They broke into a web application firewall. How do they know that we used, a Palo Alto? Because this engineer posted it on LinkedIn saying, I work at AMC, and we're a Palo Alto shop. I'm a Palo Alto certified, administrator. Fantastic. You just literally, again, advertise to the bad guys, what you're using.
Would you have a like, specific job that you would recommend cybersecurity that all on hands-on work?
Yeah. So another awesome question. Yeah. So for cybersecurity, again, like security in the past was just a one big bucket. Now it's really being sectioned out. So if you look at the umbrella of cybersecurity, you have a lot of like the domains under it. SOC operations is a really common one, which is a security operations center. SOC engineer, that's one. You have intelligence also, right? Like I mentioned. Every day is a game between who has better information, me or you, the back end, right? And so intelligence would be another one. A third area would be like investigative services. Because if you can imagine, imagine a really large environment that has thousands of systems. There are some environments that have a million systems. If you can imagine that. Imagine 1 million of these guys, right? 1 million of those across the environment, and you're breached. Now you have to figure out which of the million led to that breach, right? Why was it not patched? Was it not on the network? What happened? So I always tell folks to, again, you don't have to be the guru, but just get a really good technical understanding as to why these things happen. And the forensics would be a great space to start on forensic investigations. Yeah, of course, because what you're trying to do is determine how the hacker got in. And then like MGM, right, like I mentioned, they took down these 12 or 13 different systems, right? So you have to now, so as an investigator, it's not only, okay, I knew they got in because the system was insecure. That's only the start of your hard work. You now have to go across 1 million different endpoints and look at the logs, right? Because now it gets, and I'm going down the rabbit hole for investigations. Now I cannot let this hacker sitting in this room. He's the one that calls this. The fact that he broke in doesn't mean anything. I have evidence that you logged in and you did this. That doesn't mean anything. What I have to be able to do is to tell in a court of law, you logged in and then you went to that other system. From that system, you piggybacked and went to this one in Latin America that was vulnerable. Then you took some data out. Like, literally that time by time play. That's why investigative services is so important. It's just like a crime scene, right? Somebody broke into your house. All right, how do we figure out how they broke in? Did they leave a fingerprint? It's similar to that, but really extremely complex. So, yeah.
Would that become more like law or?
That would be investigative services. Yes. So it's cyber investigative services. I didn't touch on it today because it's also like a can of worms. It's cyber legal. That's a really hot spot right now, and it's still, I think, coming together. Some schools are also offering a JD in cyber law, because again, like to the point, like we found HackerX, did this data exfiltration. Legally, there's so many ways they can get out of it. So a lot of hackers, what you'll see is, I'm sitting here in New York, but on some system that said, aha, somebody from China broke into my computer, therefore we know it was somebody from China. What hackers do is they set up a lot of hots along the way, so it's very difficult to trace. They're not going to do it from the house, right? They're not going to do anything from their basement. They're going to break into 12 different environments first, then attack City. Because that way it makes the investigator job much more difficult. And you as the investigator, you have no clue. Did I use one hot? Well, maybe it could be in my basement doing it, or I use these 12 other hops. So now you have to, again, look at cyber, work along your cyber legal team and figure out again, how defensible is this piece in court. I think you logged in at this time, therefore I know you're the bad guy, right? That did it. That's not going to hold up in court, right? You have to show me the log. Show me the logs and when I logged in. Where did I log in from? Did you use your VPN? Right? You're a Manhattan-based worker. It shows that you logged in from Canada. Why is that? Again, like this is sort of like some of the investigative things you want.
If in the future you want to become like a attorney, if you apply cybersecurity towards like mixing it, like attorney?
You can, and that's why we have that separate domain now starting, which is cyber legal. I would do this. Take a look at some of the programs. I think it's Syracuse. There's one school in New York that actually has I think it's been out for 3 or 4 years now, which is the cyber legal piece. And we have a whole cyber legal team, and a lot of companies do. Because you have oftentimes executive impersonation. I set up a website today and say, hi, I'm Jamie Fraser, the CEO of Citigroup. Sign up for our Bitcoin mailing list, or whatever it might be. And again, like that's fraudulent, right? So we have cyber legal that actually goes against the ISPs that are hosting these things. Yeah. So again, like there's so many different parts of cyber that we can do a deep dive on. Yeah. And that's why, like again, like in my program is what I'm trying to do is not just make you a SOC engineer, not just make you an intelligence person, but take a step back and understand how everything is interrelated, how do things work. Right? And the experience I have is from the United Nations, is from Citigroup. And again, like when I interview folks, like they don't have experience at such large geographically dispersed environments. Right? Again, like like we always say, like it's finding a needle in a haystack. Like it's worse than that actually. Like it's much deeper. much worse. And so having that experience across all those domains, again, you won't be the master of them, but you'll know how they're interrelated. Yeah, of course. Yeah, please. Yeah.
When you think about their sales tactic, selling cybersecurity software as like a platform, so it's all the same stuff.
Yeah, so okay. So Palo Alto, for those of you folks that know, they make hardware. And a lot of hardware companies are now sort of getting into the software game, where you buy, appliance X, but you have to subscribe to my service. When you want the latest and greatest intelligence, you have to pay quarterly or monthly or annually. Couple things there. Number one, all companies are selling, everything is going to be, nobody's going to own anything in the past, everything's going to be rented, right? or subscribed to. You're going to subscribe to Palo Alto. Pros and cons there. A lot of shops rely only on one vendor. We've used Palo Alto for years, we only use Palo Alto. This one only uses Cisco, they only use Cisco. What you start seeing now is, again, concentration risk. Right? If there's one Cisco vulnerability, this Palo Alto environment is not going to be in, but that other environment absolutely is, right? So it's, again, you have to have like a mixed bag when you're setting up these environments. It's like you're not over-reliant on one. Specifically for Palo Alto, a lot of companies now are trying to like create their own channels of like Palo Alto certifications and all that. I think that's a really good way to start off a career. So again, you get very specialized in one thing. But again, like when you're interviewing, like be able to speak to some of the other points, right, that I mentioned before. Palo Alto is a really big one because a lot of the bad guys, like we see a lot of nation states, right? They go after any system that's used for authentication, like that's primary target. That's my foot in the door. And so you'll see a lot of them looking at vulnerabilities for Cisco devices, right, or Palo Alto devices. And once they find a vulnerability, there's a vulnerability that's announced, they immediately say, aha, we actually already have access to C. We've been in there for a few months. Now that this vulnerability is there, Cisco, City's a Cisco shop. Now they know what to sort of do against that vulnerability. It's a very dangerous game, again, of who has better information. Great question. Yeah, please.
Thinking about cybersecurity
That's a good question too. So how is cybersecurity changing with AI? And specifically, how is GRC changing? I think AI, a lot of the more mundane sort of like day-to-day tasks are going to become automated. This is just like the way of the world. It's not an AI specific thing. But what you are going to see is a lot of folks that think that they can just adopt this AI and therefore we're good. And I'll give you one great example. A certain bank, I'm not going to name the name, they didn't have proper controls on AI. And so we're on a Zoom call now. They had Zoom meetings with the pandemic, specific to mortgages, right? Commercial, really, really large, huge mortgages. So if you can imagine 1 hour, a ton of attorneys on, a ton of brokers, a lot of sensitive information going back and forth. So me as the person running the meeting, it's quite an arduous task. I have to now take notes, I have to take a screenshot, you said something, I have to quote. Right? Like, it's a really tough process, right, to sort of keep track of what went on the call. So the solution is this AI. So there's an antibot called Fireflies, very easy to use, which makes it dangerous. All you do is I send you a Zoom invite today. You forward that Zoom invite to, I think it's like info or meetings at Fireflies, whatever the site is. All you do is that. You're going to get a confirmation email that says we'll see you at Friday 9 a.m. for that broker's. The second you join that call, you have your 100 participants, and now you have this AI bot also, which is dangerous, right? So what does that AI bot do? It's transcribing everything I'm saying that 1 hour on the broker's call. It's also taking screenshots of everything I've shared too. And so that's a tremendous risk, as you can imagine. If I'm sharing something again that's between us, right, in our company, but the second that screenshot is stored on our site, you've lost control. If they are breached, that information should be controlled. And so what companies are doing, they're adopting technologies, but they're also making their footprint a bit bigger too. Yeah, which is a very scary thing. Specific to GRC, that's the only direction I see it going in. I know there's a lot more tools, but long story short, any tool that we're using AI in, you're going to want to have a human oversight of that. That's basically what it comes down to.
Can you get insights to the technology and
sorry,
Can you share any insight into the future of cybersecurity technologies and the future that find
Yeah, so no, that's a good one. I'm gonna go back to the one that the future of cyber. This one, this slide I think says a lot. These are just like, again, generalized buckets, but this is what the future is gonna look like. We mentioned AI already, right? We also mentioned worm GPTs. I think the zero trust architecture is a really big one too. Because again, environments were set up just like this building was set up. I have a Baruch ID, I walk into the front door, I can get to any room, again, theoretically, right, that I want to. Zero trust is going to be, again, they scan my ID, you're superior, you only get access to rooms, first floor and the cafeteria. That's going to be a huge one just because that, they call, it limits the blast radius. So if they're able to break into one environment or one application, they can't then jump to other applications or other environments. So they're really contained, like if you get breached, it's fine. It's only containing it to that one application, one system. You're not then propagating, you're not able to jump elsewhere. That to me, I think is the biggest thing now. And that's such a huge, like a paradigm shift of the way that companies have been traditionally set up. That takes years to adopt. If you say today, you know what, zero trust is going to make us more secure, and I'm going to adopt it, that's literally like a 5-year to 10-year project, if not longer, depending on how complex your environment is. And you'll see a lot of companies doing that now, adopting zero trust. The other one I would say, just in closing, would be like the third-party vendor list. That's another major one too. Again, really novice hackers, they're going to, I want my target is city, I'm going to go after city. The really, really skilled staff, I'll give you another great real world example. Target was breached, I want to say like 2016. And so again, right, customer and millions of customer records from credit cards, right? Like it has a ton of cascading impacts. The way that Target was breached was with a third-party vendor, the vendor that manages their cash registers. There was a couple of systems that were unpatched. And because that third-party vendor didn't patch the systems, that's how the hackers were able to get into Target. So you think, again, companies spend multi-millions of dollars on defenses. All it takes is a couple of vulnerable systems to be able to get in. And it's such a scary thing to be able to do that. And cybersecurity is saying, okay, let's say that's going to happen to us on a monthly basis. Right? We have 1 million endpoints, we know a couple are going to be breached. Cybersecurity is all about how do we limit the blast radius? How do we limit the damage that they're going to do? When they're in our environment.
Yeah, someone said, can you talk a little more about the company and the culture, and do you guys also hire like college students and what are some so
For sure, yeah, no. So that's it, but like for a lot of things, what I would suggest is a few things. Number one is the internship programs. Again, all of us are privileged here, and I have to emphasize that. And that's why I think the group, and that's why I think it's such an awesome stepping stone to bigger and better things. Is the fact that we are rubbing elbows with bankers, we're rubbing elbows with lawyers, we're rubbing elbows with so many companies that again are running the world. There's so many companies headquartered here. There's pharmaceuticals, we have Pfizer on 42nd. There's so much we have access to. I would say internships is the first way to go. The second one is again is to make sure you have the hard credentials, right? To get your foot into the door, and the soft credentials, right? Like, again, you could be the 10th person I'm interviewing for this role. How are you going to stand out when compared to the other 9 people that I've interviewed? And that's why going above and beyond and doing your homework and really speaking to the role, speaking to this application test, speaking to the certification. Why did you do this SSP certification? That's a great question, right? Again, not to tick the box, like have a story to tell about it. I think that will go a long way. My particular company, we are growing cyber like quite a bit actually. The thing is that it ebbs and flows, and a lot of banks follow what other banks do. So last year we had layoffs at certain companies, and guess what? Like the group does it as all. You'll see other banks also doing that. So what that does is a couple of things. And you'll see it here in Europe all the time. You'll have somebody that's a cybersecurity role at Citi. They're laid off, they quit, whatever it is. They'll move to JPM. From JPM, they spend a couple of years there, and then they move to Morgan Stanley. Then from Morgan Stanley, they move to Goldman. And so again, having that proximity is such an important thing. And that's basically when you're looking at a role, take a look at again what are some of the commonalities amongst those roles. Yeah, I would just say like really be able to speak and articulate why you're in cyber, what you can bring to the table. I'm hiring a SOC engineer. What can you do for the company? And really not just like go in for an answer. Because one of the things that I teach in my work is you don't want to think on the spot. That is one of the worst things for an interview is to think on the spot. What you want to do is prepare beforehand. Are they going to ask me about my degree? Are they going to ask me about my previous experience? So if I'm able to pick, your second job, at one point, you set up a GRC application like for this company, okay, tell me, you should be able to, don't think on the spot, but literally go on autopilot. I prepared for this question. This is what I've done, and you have these 3 bullets that you can go down. Because I think confidence goes a really long way when you're interviewing, and you have to be prepared. Like, I think it's an academic thing. I love that the Baruch AIS taught this. Always over prepared. If I think I'm going to need 10 hours to study for the cybersecurity test, put in 15, right? And so that's how I sort of approach interviews too. Regardless of how it could be a lateral move, it could be a senior move, but is to really go and prepare so that any question they ask you, you'll have a strong answer. Again, like I'm emphasizing the second one, soft skills. So, no more questions. Yeah, yeah. No, I really appreciate the opportunity. Happy to talk to cyber, soft cyber about anybody. Again, like I mentioned, you have my details, right? Feel free to, hit me up on LinkedIn, feel free to send me an email. I really want to hear tough questions. That's my style. And I think that's something I've heard talk. There was a business management class I took in my last semester. And it was a case study that we read, and the professor's like, okay, who's the most important person in this paper, right? Like that was the question. What an easy question. And I answered it wrong. He answered it wrong one. It was like a 2-hour course. We spent a couple hours on that one question. And that to me sticks with me because that's the type of mentality we need in cybersecurity, is you have to get to root cause. I think it's these 99 things, all of them are. You have to, okay, what else is there? What else am I missing? What's a critical piece of information I'm missing? That to me, like, again, that goes above and beyond. And again, I love that skill set that we're talking. I see it in all of you today, right? Like having that inquisitive sort of approach. Like always ask questions. You have the answer, that's wonderful. Go to the next question. Sort of approach.
What kind of certification would you apply for a cybersecurity major?
Yeah, so there's some certifications, they have different values. Right? You have some that are very entry level. You have some that are super senior, right? That even if you get the super senior one, you can't go anywhere with it, right? Because you need to have a lot of experience. Right? I would specifically speak to the couple now that I see all over the place, are CISA and CISM. I think it's security analyst and security man. I forget the big guys. But those are the 2 big ones. That again would get to the right. That again is the hard credential speech, right? Like that's just to get your foot into the door. I have certification XYZ to get in. Those are the 2 big ones. What you'll see, and it's unfortunate, is that a lot of these tests are, for a lot all certifications actually, they're rarely updated. So even when I studied for a couple of the ones I have, the data and the technology that was on the questions was from like 7 years ago. Banks use bleeding edge technology. We use stuff that was made yesterday. There's no way that technology is going to be on that test, right? And vice versa. You won't find that on them. And so that's why it's really critical just get a good lay of the land of what's going on in the real world. Like what are banks actually using? What are they concerned with? So the certifications are fantastic to put in the door, but then say, okay, on top of the certification, this is the experience I have. This is the knowledge I have on this application. Like that's what really sells. Somebody as a candidate during an interview. Yeah. Appreciate the time. Yeah. The question mark. Okay. So all right. We are giving away stuff. We're giving away gift cards, and I'm going to ask 3 questions, which I didn't think of yet. So I'm going to think of them right now. Okay. Why do you? I mentioned geopolitical. Just tell me what's geopolitical cyber? What is that? This is a test to see if anybody knows. I use the word geopolitical. Right here, right? Future subject geopolitical. What did I talk about? Why is geopolitical cyber such a big deal? What is it?
It's like someone from outside, they can attack us and take control of our.
It's like different locations have different security, and like if let's compromise their attack locations.
So I hand here. No, nobody. Was that too tough of a question? Yeah, please.
nation state actors can also act as breach each other's systems. I remember you being that IT army, Telegram groups.
Right.
To reach
He gets gift card number one. Yeah, that's right. So geopolitical is basically what's going on between countries and what's the subsequent cyber action. I'm standing here today as US, and I say, you know what, China attacked us yesterday. What's the implication of me stating that publicly? Like going out in the media and saying, we think it was China. Obviously, China's allies are not going to attack us. It wasn't China. You're painting China to be the bad guy. And so geopolitical is basically any cyber actions that are taken as a result of some public opinion. It could be trade tensions, right? It could be embargoes. There's so much that can be wrapped into it. US started charging higher tariffs, right, for goods coming in from China. You know what? I don't like the sound of that. I'm going to attack China as a result, or the US is, depending on what side. Yeah, so that was it. So yeah, good one on that. Next one. I think this is an easy one. Should I pay a ransom? No, that's also why. Yeah, awesome. Yep. Number 2 is there. Yeah. That's exactly why. Yeah. So ransomware. Again, of course, you can pay the ransom. You know, the bad guy, right? You can't trust the bad guy. They say here, here's the encryption key. You can get your environment back. Pleasure doing business with you. Several things. You don't know if they put in a backdoor, like you mentioned. You also don't know if those systems are still stable. So say they took off again, like they took down Citibank mobile online banking. Right? Now it's back online. Wonderful. Our millions of customers now get access, but it's failing in some parts. Why is it failing? Some people can't access their account. Why is that? So now you have to second guess basically that entire infrastructure, that entire environment, even after paying the ransom. So now I'm thinking, I'm not going to sleep for the next month because now I have to figure out how we can now retrust that environment. Yeah. So awesome. Yeah, so good one. Next one, let me see. Let me see if I can. Denial of service attack. What is that?
So they attack like too many computers. And they can sit down there and take on information for a long time.
It's when you're pinging the address like multiple times from like multiple bots, and they're attacking a single address without take down.
You got it. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. So denial of service is where an application is taken down by sending it too many requests. It's again just like a classic text message. Live. How are you doing today? Right? Then I wait for his response. If I message him, how are you doing? And then I send a million other messages at the same time. His phone is going to overflow and the application is going to crash. Very simplistically put, that's what a DDoS attack is, a denial of service. On the application side, and you said it perfectly. So what a lot of bad guys do is they set up these botnets. Again, it's not simply the guy sitting at his computer performing it. I've now taken over these systems that are in Asia Pacific, that are in Latin America, that are in Europe as well. They are now all attacking CitibankOnline.com. It takes down the searches. Now the investigation starts. Aha, we were attacked. Who was it? And then you go look at the range of IPs, and they're all over the globe. So it's very difficult to trace, but very, very easy to perform. That's the low sophistication. What is that? Yeah, that would be like an opportunist or a hacktivist. That's very easy. You can literally download software today and launch a DDoS attack against Google tomorrow. You know, it's really, really easy to learn, easy to do, yeah, and easy to perform. Fantastic. Invite everybody online.